A chained Apache woman who'd rather die than accept help, and a cowboy who risks everything to free her. Their escape at dawn was only the beginning. Stay with us, like and subscribe, and tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Let's get started. Colt moved quietly through the dying embers of the outlaw camp, the sunrise painting the desert gold behind him. He had only one purpose, to free the Apache woman tied to the post like stolen property. Her wrists were bruised and bleeding, her face streaked with sand and defiance. When he cut the chains, she didn't collapse or thank him. She lifted her chin like a warrior facing death. "I'd rather die than be yours," she said. Colt stepped back, palms open. "You're not mine. I'm setting you free." But the outlaws stirred behind them, already waking to the betrayal. She didn't trust him. Colt could see that in the fire of her eyes, but she understood danger better than any cowboy ever could. Without a word, she darted toward the brush, her movements fast despite her injuries. Colt followed, not to control her, but because the outlaws would kill them both if he didn't. Gunshots cracked behind them, tearing through the morning stillness. Colt grabbed her arm only long enough to pull her behind a rock before bullets tore past. "Let me go," she hissed. "They want me," he whispered, "but they'll kill you too." Sand kicked up as they ran deeper into the canyon, the shouting voices growing distant but persistent. She moved with surprising strength for someone who had been chained for days, her breathing strained, yet steady. Colt noticed the way her jaw tightened every time he glanced toward her, a silent warning not to think she needed him. He didn't, but he also wasn't going to leave her to die. A ricochet sparked off the canyon wall. Colt grabbed her hand, pulling her into a narrow slit in the rocks where they could hide. Inside the shadows, she finally jerked her hand away, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion and fury. "I need no man to save me," she muttered, wiping the blood from her wrists. Colt nodded. "I believe that." She wasn't expecting that answer. For a moment, her expression faltered, confusion flickering. He removed his hat, offering her a small leather pouch of water. She stared at it like it might be poisoned, then looked back at him with a hardness carved from survival. "Why would a cowboy betray his own kind?" Colt shrugged. "Cruel men ain't my kind." She hesitated, then finally took the pouch, drinking slow but deliberate sips. Water dripped from her chin as she lowered it, her breath calmer now. "My name is Tala," she said at last. "What do you want from me?" Colt leaned against the canyon wall, dust settling on his coat. "Nothing." Her eyes narrowed. "Everyone wants something." He shook his head. "Not me. I just couldn't watch you die chained like that." The simplicity of his words unsettled her more than any threat could. For the first time, she looked at him not with hatred but with bewilderment. Tala stepped into a thin beam of light, revealing the war paint smudged across her cheek, the strength in her posture despite the torment she'd endured. "My tribe thinks I'm dead," she whispered. "The outlaws took me 3 nights ago." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. Colt felt something twist inside him. "Then let's get you back." She shook her head sharply. "You don't understand. The trail is dangerous. You would lose your life." Colt gave a tired half-smile. "Lady, I've been losing pieces of my life for years. One more won't scare me." The outlaws' distant voices echoed down the canyon, reminding them time was slipping. Tala moved first, stepping back into the harsh daylight. "If you stay with me, you walk the enemy's path," she warned. Colt followed anyway. "I've walked worse." She studied him for a long moment, really studied him, as if weighing the truth in his words. Her shoulders eased a fraction, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "Then keep up," she said quietly. She scaled the canyon wall with practiced skill, her bare feet gripping the rocky ledges. Colt climbed after, slower, but determined not to fall behind her. At the top, the desert stretched wide and unforgiving. Tala scanned the land, her instincts sharp. She pointed toward distant ridges. My people are that way, but the outlaws know it too. Colt dusted off his coat. Then we'll outsmart them. She glanced at him skeptically. Cowboys rarely outsmart anyone. He laughed under his breath. You haven't met me yet. For the first time, the corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. She turned without a word and started across the desert, her pace steady and fierce. Colt followed, the sun rising hot behind them. As they crossed the open plains, Colt noticed Tala's steps falter. She hid it well, but he saw the exhaustion creeping into her body. You're hurt, he said softly. She didn't respond. He stopped walking. Tala, you're hurt. She turned, fire in her eyes again. Pain is nothing. I keep moving. Colt stepped closer. Let me help. She stiffened as he reached out, but didn't pull away when he lifted her arm carefully, examining the deep bruises. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. She swallowed hard, unfamiliar with kindness. Why do you care? She whispered. Colt met her gaze. Because someone should have. They rested under a lone juniper tree, the shade thin but merciful. Tala sat with her back straight, refusing to show weakness even now. Colt cut strips from his worn shirt to wrap her wrists, each movement slow so she wouldn't feel threatened. She watched him, her expression unreadable, her breathing steadying with each careful touch. When he finished, she looked down at the makeshift bandages, flexing her fingers. You saved me twice now, she murmured. Colt shook his head. No, I just gave you a chance to save yourself. Something in her hardened exterior cracked, just a hairline fracture of trust. When they stood again, the desert wind carried the faint drumming of hooves, the outlaws still hunting them. Tala faced Colt, her eyes no longer burning with hatred, but with a cautious respect. If we reach the river by nightfall, my people will find us, she said. Colt nodded. Then let's make it. She stepped beside him, not behind, not ahead, but beside, and they walked together into the endless stretch of land. Two strangers bound by danger, survival, and something neither of them could explain yet. The sun climbed higher, the chase far from over, but one truth settled quietly between them. She didn't belong to him, but she no longer wished him gone. The canyon walls rose like giants around them, offering shade from the brutal sun. Tala's steps faltered, her body weakened by days of torment, but her spirit stayed sharp and watchful. Colt walked behind her at a respectful distance, careful not to startle her. She was free now, yet freedom still felt fragile. Wind whistled between the rocks as Colt extended his canteen again. Tala glared, pride stiff as stone, but her cracked lips trembled, and the fight in her wavered. At last, she accepted the water, sipping slowly. For a moment, she allowed herself vulnerability, though she tried hard to hide it. She wiped her mouth with the back of her trembling hand. Her eyes flicked toward Colt, suspicious but curious. "Why help me?" she asked again, as if testing whether his reason would change. Colt shrugged, leaning against the canyon wall. "Because you deserved freedom," he said. Simple truth. Tala stared at him, as if searching for a hidden motive buried beneath every word. She was used to cruelty, deception, and broken promises, not kindness, with no demand attached. Her hardened gaze softened for half a second before she masked it again. "Kindness from a stranger is rarely real," she murmured. Colt met her gaze steadily, refusing to look away. "Then think of me as someone who owed the world a good deed," he said. "Maybe I'm just trying to balance my mistakes." She didn't understand the depth of his sorrow, but she heard it in his voice, pain shaped into quiet honesty. They continued deeper into the canyon until the shadows stretched long. Tala kept glancing at the cliffs above, alert for danger. Colt admired her sharp instincts. She didn't just survive, she calculated, she analyzed, she anticipated. Even wounded, She was a warrior, someone who had learned to trust only herself. When they reached an open stretch, Colt noticed her limp worsening. Tala stumbled, catching herself on the canyon wall. He stepped forward, but she raised a hand sharply. "I walk alone," she said. Colt respected her pride, but he couldn't ignore the pain etched across her features. "Alone doesn't mean unaided," he replied. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. That was enough for now. They rested beneath a stone overhang where faint traces of ancient petroglyphs decorated the wall. Tala traced her fingers along the carvings, recognizing symbols of her ancestors. "They walked here long before either of us were born," she whispered. Colt watched her, recognizing reverence in her eyes, a sacred connection he would never fully understand, but deeply respected. Tala lowered her hand. "If I die here, at least I'll be among them," she said quietly. Colt shook his head firmly. "You're not dying here. Not while I'm breathing." Tala studied him with renewed intensity. His words were not bold bravado, they were a promise. A strange warmth tugged at her chest, something unfamiliar and dangerous. "You speak like you carry ghosts," she said. Colt exhaled. "I do." He didn't elaborate, and she didn't ask. Some wounds needed silence. Shadows thickened as evening approached. They needed shelter for the night. Tala spotted a narrow crevice between two massive slabs of rock. Safely hidden, they settled inside. Colt gathered dry sticks while Tala watched the entrance, listening for danger. When he lit a small fire, she moved back, wary of memories. Her chains had once burned in the firelight. He noticed her discomfort and gently shifted the flames lower. Tala blinked, surprised by his consideration. "You observe more than you speak," she said softly. Colt answered, "Sometimes listening says more than talking." The fire crackled between them, soft and warm. They ate quietly, Colt sharing dried venison from his pack. Tala chewed slowly, savoring the first real food she'd had in days. When she finished, she whispered something to the flames, a quiet prayer of thanks. Colt didn't understand the words, but he respected the devotion woven into every syllable. Night settled heavy over the canyon. The firelight flicked across Tala's face, revealing exhaustion she could no longer hide. Colt took off his coat and placed it beside her without a word. She stared, confused. "I am not cold," she said. "I know," Colt replied, "but I don't need it." She hesitated, then gently pulled the coat around her shoulders. It was the first thing she had accepted without suspicion. They slept lightly. Tala's back to the wall, Colt facing the entrance. He stayed awake long after she drifted off, listening for footsteps, ready to defend her if danger came. When dawn broke, Tala woke to the smell of brewing coffee. Colt held out a tin cup. She took it reluctantly, curious. "You treat me as if I am important," she said. Colt smiled faintly. "You're alive. Isn't that important enough?" She sipped the coffee, warmth spreading through her chest. They set out again, climbing toward the canyon's exit. The morning light painted the desert gold, and for the first time since her capture, Tala breathed without fear, strangling her chest. Colt walked beside her now, not leading, not protecting, but accompanying. Their silence was no longer tense. It was calm. Near midday, she paused at a cliff overlooking the desert plains. "My people are beyond those hills," she said. Colt nodded. "Then let's take you home." Tala looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You risked everything for someone you do not know," she said. "Why?" Colt adjusted his hat. "Because someone should." She stepped closer, studying him with a softness he had not yet seen. "And who risks everything for you?" she asked quietly. The question struck him, deeper than a bullet. Colt swallowed, his gaze drifting away. "No one," he admitted. "Not anymore." Tala's eyes glimmered with something like sorrow and recognition. She reached out, hesitantly, and touched his arm, her fingers warm against his skin. It wasn't gratitude, it wasn't affection, it was acknowledgement. "Then perhaps you deserve a home too," she whispered. Before he could respond, distant drums echoed across the desert. Tala's breath caught. "My people," she said. "They're searching for me." Colt nodded. "Go to them." But she didn't move. Instead, she looked at him, her voice trembling. "Walk with me." In those 3 words, every wall she had built began to break. They walked together toward the ridge, shadows stretching behind them. 2 wounded souls, 2 new beginnings, 2 lives intertwined by fate.